Our late week problems we inherit from this storm moving through Oregon and California right now. Heavy snow, heavy rain. This is what's going to traverse the Rockies and open up the door for a lot of trouble for us. So as we track this storm moving east here, we have a strong area of low pressure that's going to be parking itself and moving east across parts of Nebraska. And the winds aloft are going to be dictating what goes on the ground. We have a screaming wind coming down from the Rockies into the high plains. It's a downsloping dry wind to the west. Meanwhile, a little hint of moisture coming out of the Gulf. That's going to fuel some thunderstorms that break out. And we have a big risk of severe weather just east of that zone of low pressure. Extra lift in the atmosphere. So we got the wind, even separate from thunderstorms. We'll have gusts of wind 40 to 50 miles per hour, 50 to 60 into the central plains, 60 to 70 mile per hour plus gusts into Texas and eastern New Mexico. So volatile fire weather there. One thing I want to point out, while the most widespread thunderstorms are going to be at the parts of the Mississippi Valley, the limiting factor is moisture. But with that said, there will still likely be some updrafts into parts of Arkansas that get going, and they will be unattached to other storms, and there'll be basically supercell thunderstorms that could be rotating and bringing a tornado risk to some. So that's more of an issue for Arkansas and up into Missouri. The greatest risk overall for all hazards, damaging wind, tornadoes, hail, and some flash flooding will be up into parts of the St. Louis metro all the way down then into Arkansas. This is where we have fewer but violently rotating thunderstorms into Arkansas and a greater number of thunderstorms, some of which will be rotating into the St. Louis metro. The greatest motivation behind our high risk is the wind, but the tornado threat's not far behind. Friday night, blizzard breaks out into the northern plains. Storms push east. And then as we step into the day Saturday, we have a significant risk of just as many strong to severe storms, perhaps with more moisture in the low levels of the atmosphere. It might be a little easier for the atmosphere to spin some tornadoes up and have them touch down instead of anything elevated into places like Mississippi and Alabama. So a high risk of severe weather. Tornadoes a big concern for the Gulf Coast states on Saturday afternoon and Saturday night, Damien.
Watch remains in effect for parts of California that were devastated by wildfires earlier this year. The rain along those burn scars has created serious concerns for landslides, with thousands of people ordered to evacuate. I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Carter Evans, who's in Malibu. Carter, no one knows better than you and the folks out in the area what it's like to deal first with the fires and now conditions like this, because your home is in the affected area. So how long are these conditions expected to last, and what are we looking for over the next couple of days?
Well, the good news is it's not supposed to last that long. I think we're going to have, the heavier rain this morning through today, and then it's supposed to ease off tomorrow, and that's certainly good news. But we just don't need any more of this rain right now. Well, we do need rain here in California. We just don't need it right here in these burn scar areas, because if you look up at the mountains here, there's really no vegetation on the hillsides. There's nothing holding that dirt back. And so when you get a really heavy downpour, that water just starts picking up speed downhill and just picking up dirt and mud and debris with it. And that's how you get these debris flows. And there's one actually right up on the street about 3 miles behind me right here in Topanga Canyon.
Wow. All right, Carter Evans reporting from Malibu for us this morning. Carter, be safe, be well. Love to the family. Sure. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the first look at the national forecast. Grant.
Hey, good morning, Vlad. Look, this is not just a Southern California or even a West Coast storm system. This is a massive storm that's going to have wide-reaching impacts as we head through the coming days. Let's put it on the radar on the map and let's show you this. I mean, you've got snow in the mountains all the way into the Pacific Northwest and then all the way down the coast, where in Southern California we are watching at least the heaviest of the rain moving out. Not before, though, producing a lot of damage and still producing a lot of heavy rainfall across portions of the San Diego area. But earlier on this morning, we had very heavy rainfall, flash flood concerns, in addition to some very gusty winds that may have even produced a tornado. In Montebello, National Weather Service is going to have to go check out where there's multiple trees down, and that could have been the result of a tornado. We'll see about that. That storm system moves to the east as we go through the next couple of days. As it starts to tap into that Gulf moisture, we are going to see a multi-day severe weather outbreak from the Central Plains all the way into the East Coast. We'll talk more about this later, but there is a significant concern for tornadoes and damaging winds as we go into the weekend.
Hi, so what we know as of right now is there was an explosion that occurred inside a manhole at the Engineering Key on Texas Tech campus. This explosion did cause a power outage across Texas Tech University, including the Health Sciences Center. We did evacuate the Engineering Key, and we are asking that all public and unofficial personnel please avoid campus at this time. As of right now, power will be shut down to the entire campus while repairs are started.
Engine 4 arrived first on scene and found multiple manhole covers with smoke and fire issuing from them. Engine 4 quickly requested additional units to help mitigate the rapidly escalating scene, and a second alarm was called by Battalion 1. This remains, no injuries have been reported at this time.
Students, we are just wanting to inform you that you can go ahead and go home for spring break. We are closing school down for the next couple days.
Now this noontime continuing to follow developments out of Connecticut after a man in his 30s claims he was held captive by his stepmother for the last 20 years. Erica Ritchie is live in studio now. This is truly a very unique and wild story.
Yeah, Kay, officials were first alerted to the alleged captivity a month ago when they responded to a house fire in Waterbury, Connecticut. A 32-year-old man inside told them he set that fire on purpose in search for freedom. Yesterday, his stepmother was arrested, charged as the captor.
It's truly a horrifying, and it's beyond comprehension what occurred here, because frankly, what was being reported was unfathomable to us at that point in time.
The man telling investigators he had been locked in a room inside of this house since he was 11 years old after he was pulled out of school because DCF had been called on the family. An extensive investigation revealed that he was abused, starved, and severely neglected, including having food and water withheld and being confined to an 8x9 back storage room in the house for all but 2 hours a day to do chores. The man claimed he had to drink from the toilet to survive and was only 68 pounds when he was found by investigators. After his 56-year-old stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, was arraigned yesterday on charges of assault, kidnapping, and cruelty, her lawyer spoke with reporters saying there's more to the story.
He was not locked in a room. She did not restrain him in any way. She provided food. She provided shelter. She is blown away by these allegations. We think as the evidence comes out, you will see that she's not the villain she's being made out to be.
Sullivan's attorney did say that the man's biological father did live at the home until recently, and he was the one, according to the attorney, who dictated how his son would be raised. So far, he has not been charged or facing any charges right now. The Waterbury police chief says that investigators started a collection to buy the man some items in an attempt to make life more comfortable on what is expected to be a very long road of recovery. Live in studio this noontime, I'm Erica Ritchie.
For almost a week, Niger's service stations have been short of enough premium fuel to meet local demand. As a result, long queues of cars and motorbikes have been forming at those that do have a supply. Fuel is rationed by the Niger Petroleum Company, Sonidep, and some people say this does not make their day-to-day activities any easier. I left Banifandu and came all the way to Bukoki, and they told me there was no petrol. Now someone has just called me to tell me to come to Wadata, someone with a litre of petrol. For 2 or 3 litres you have to waste 1.5 litres. It's a nightmare. It's an unusual experience for Nigerians. An oil-rich country, its first refinery was built in 2011. Today, due to a number of factors, it's unable to meet the national demand estimated at over 2 million litres a day. Some people worry about the lack of transparency in fuel management. We don't have much information on this because the authorities, who are obliged to give us full explanations, are not doing so. We're at a loss. We don't have any real information. While Sonidep blames the situation on a stock shortage, this argument is dismissed by transport operators who are the most impacted. In addition to the scarcity of fuel, they're seeing their number of clients go down. The Taxi and Urban Transport Drivers Union believes the state should increase daily production to meet demand. We think that the state must take a step forward in terms of production, because if we're told that there are 25 trucks for the city of Niamey, I don't think that's enough. Today, as soon as they stop oil smuggling, everyone goes to the pumps. And when everyone's at the pumps, What's there can't be enough.
Vraiment, ce qu'il y a sur les pompes, ça ne peut pas suffire.
Tanker trucks are expected to increase from 24 to 100 a day in the capital alone. The organizations are also calling on the government to open the borders with Benin and Nigeria to access temporary supplies.
Now to the trade wars. Key U.S. allies are retaliating after the Trump administration threatens to impose a massive tariff on European alcohol. Now that as the White House also takes aim at a series of environmental regulations. CBS's Natalie Brand is at the White House this morning.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Canada facing G7 partners amid an escalating trade war among allies.
Mr. Secretary, what's your message to Canada?
Writing on Truth Social Thursday, President Trump slammed the EU for a 50% tariff on whiskey, saying if it's not removed, the U.S. will put a 200% tariff on all wines and other alcohols from Europe.
We want to protect the American worker, that a lot of these trade deals haven't been fair.
The Trump administration is also taking aim at environmental regulations beefed up under the Biden administration. The EPA announced plans to roll back rules on pollution, electric vehicles, and air quality, said the agency would reconsider the 2009 scientific finding that greenhouse gases are a danger to the public. The administration says the moves are aimed at cutting costs, but they're expected to face legal challenges.
They are taking us back to the 1960s, from before the times when we had regulations that actually cleaned up our water, protect people from across our country from cancer causing agents in our air.
Today is the deadline for the EPA and other federal agencies to submit plans for mass layoffs as part of the ongoing efforts to downsize the federal government. Over on Capitol Hill, lawmakers are staring down a Friday deadline to avert a partial government shutdown.
Democrats need to decide if they're going to support funding legislation that came over from the House or if they're going to shut down the government. So far, it's looking like they plan to shut it down.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says there aren't the votes to advance the House-passed funding bill, proposing a smaller and shorter stopgap measure instead to give lawmakers more time to negotiate. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture has announced it's cutting 2 federal programs that provided funding to schools and food banks to buy directly from local farmers. The agency said the decision is aimed at returning to long-term, fiscally responsible initiatives. The School Nutrition Association says the change will affect schools across the country at a time when they're already facing high food costs.
To hold the G7 presidency this year. As we mark the 50 years of G7 cooperation, I cannot find a better time for us to host this important meeting. There's a saying here in Quebec, on a du pain sur la planche.
It literally means we have bread on our board, a lot to do.
And it's true, we have a lot of bread on our plate and to be working together on common challenges. So, of course, peace and stability is on the top of our agenda, and I look forward to discussing how we can continue to support Ukraine in the face of Russia's illegal aggression, and we will want to see just and lasting peace in Ukraine. Of course, we want to foster long-term stability as well in the Middle East in the interest of all the people in the region.
Time for one question.
Ed O'Keefe.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for stopping by. Given the volatility of the markets, given the threat and back and forth, how are these tariffs good for the economy?
Well, look, I'm less concerned about the short term. I think we've had a big unwind, and the tariffs, we've got strategic industries we've got to have. We want to protect the American worker, that a lot of these trade deals haven't been fair. But I can tell you what's not good for the economy is this government shutdown. I don't know what Democrats are thinking here, because they're going to own it. And to the extent that it hurts confidence, hurts the American people, we have had incredible Republican unity since January 20th. And the fact that the Democrats are in disarray, they're flailing, and this is the best they can do, that I think this is the economic story for the next few days.
Not the tariffs.
Not the tariff, not for the next few days. If they want to take us into a shutdown, they're going to own it.
Mr. Secretary,
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, what plans is the administration?
Talks underway in Moscow with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff trying to convince Russian President Vladimir Putin to sign a 30-day ceasefire proposal, a U.S. plan already accepted by Ukraine. Putin has said the fighting will only stop when permanent peace is reached, and he intends to keep the 20% of Ukrainian territory he currently occupies. A prisoner exchange, the return of forcibly displaced Ukrainian children, and a commitment to signing the minerals deal, all part of the proposed agreement. Donald Trump appearing to threaten more sanctions if Russia does not agree, saying he can do things financially that would be devastating for Russia.
Ukraine has agreed to it, and hopefully Russia will agree to it.
In a rare visit to the combat zone in Kursk Wednesday, Putin ordering his troops to destroy all Ukrainian formations in the contested border region. You can see widespread destruction there, building after building badly damaged. Russian troops have been slowly pushing back Ukrainian forces, Ukraine hoping to hold on to that territory for leverage in future negotiations.
And Ukraine is still fighting hard. Earlier this week, launching the biggest drone attack of the war so far, reaching Moscow and injuring 20 people.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has rejected holding negotiations with the U.S. over a nuclear deal.
This after Iranian media reported Tehran received a letter from U.S. President Donald Trump for talks. The letter was handed over to Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi by UAE diplomatic advisor to the President Anwar Gargash.
In negotiations, one must be certain that the other party will honor its commitments. When we know they won't follow through, what is the point of negotiating? Therefore, the invitation to negotiate and the expression of willingness to do so is merely a deception of public opinion.
Khamenei further added that negotiating with Trump administration will tighten the knot of sanctions and increase pressure on Iran.
Some inside the country keep insisting on the issue of negotiations. Why don't you respond? Why don't you negotiate? Why don't you sit down with America? I want to make it clear, if the goal of negotiations is to untie the knot of sanctions, then negotiating with this U.S. administration will not achieve that. In fact, it will only tighten the knot.
Khamenei criticized the United States, saying Washington is threatening militarism, but Iran is capable of retaliating. The Iranian Supreme Leader also dismissed the claims about nuclear weapons, saying Tehran does not have any nuclear weapons and it is not seeking one.
In 2018, Trump withdrew the U.S. from Tehran's 2015 nuclear deal and reimposed sanctions impacting Iran's economy severely. A year later, Tehran reacted by violating the deal's nuclear curbs.